Hey, this is RJ May, and you're watching Mr. Mario 2011.
Hey, so what is going on, everyone? It is me, Mr. Mario, and today I'm going to be asking you all, do you all think it's worth selling your older systems to upgrade to newer systems? Now, this is going to be my thoughts, my opinions, my rambling on the matter, and if you all want to listen in, great, but I will warn you all, this video is not for the type of people who say, I don't care about the older systems. When newer systems come out, new game systems, whatever it is, I don't play the old stuff. Historically, I've never gone back to the old stuff. I don't have a desire to go back to the old stuff, whatever it is. I just want to upgrade. This video is not for you. Although, if you want to listen and get my opinion on and everything, that's great, and I totally respect you for that. Now, this video is more for the people who are interested, who might want to be upgrading to, you know, either a Wii U, a PlayStation 4, an Xbox One, even a PC here soon, although this is honestly more for consoles, if anything. Anybody who's wanting to do that, because honestly, in my opinion, it's kind of getting to the point where if you are on the 7th generation of systems, they're going to be lacking support here pretty soon, if not already. You've already seen quite a few games that are coming out exclusively on PC and 8th generation, several games that were supposed to be cross-generation, so 7th and 8th generation releases, that had their 7th generation releases cut back. One of the games, for example, was Dying Light. That was actually supposed to come out on Xbox 360 and PS3, and the team ended up axing those versions of the game because they said, we want to focus on the next generation, or the current generation, whatever you want to call it, the 8th generation versions of this game, which honestly, I respect them for doing that because that's a whole nother topic on its own. But I do believe if developers want to get the best out of newer generations of systems, they do have to cut back on the older generations. And that's been proven time and time again with several games out there. Now, when it comes to upgrading, honestly, for me, it comes down to a monetary thing. That's one big thing. And by that, I mean, normally, I do keep my systems. Honestly, I do. And I'll upgrade to the newer systems. But me, I like going back to older systems. I like playing older games whenever I can, anything like that. And I don't really have an issue with that too much. There might be some people, you know, they might be either strapped for cash, which if you are really, really strapped for cash, sometimes you might have to second guess, you know, is it really worth, should I just save up a little more? Is it really worth, you know, paying for that new system? Should I spend it on something different? Although that's a whole nother personal thing. That's your own personal merit, whatever it might be. And it might not even be a broke factor or anything like that. I was like that when I was a kid. I mean, it took me months and months and months to save up, you know, $400 or $500 for a new system. So, I mean, if you're younger, I completely understand that and I sympathize with that. But at the same time, there are also some pretty enticing deals, and this is another thing. Now, one thing I've seen, I don't know if this is still going on right now, but if you trade in at least a certain model of Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3 to GameStop, and you use that when you trade it in, you immediately trade towards a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One, you instantly get $150 trade-in credit for that one system. That, to me, is worth it. The reason being is that you can pick up working Xbox 360s and PS3s locally or other sources on eBay, Amazon, whatever it is, for quite cheap. So honestly, if I was in that position, what I would probably do if I was wanting to upgrade to a newer system, I would probably, if I didn't already have a system, I could find one on Craigslist pretty cheap that was working and all that, trade it into GameStop, get my $150 trading credit, and then save that money on the newer system, you know, that I upgrade to. So to me, that would be worth it. However, at the same time, if it was one of my systems that I completely owned, unless it had a major sentimental value to me, like, you know, somebody who passed away gave it to me, whatever it might be, I would more than likely make sure I back up my data, anything like that. You know, we don't live in the age of memory cards anymore, so definitely back it up to a flash drive, probably at least twice, and just have that on hand, because realistically, I would probably want to get that system later on down the line. Now, there's a big regret factor with this as well, too. I've known several friends, I'm sure you might be some of these people, and I'm sure people might know these people, who have sold off their older systems, and they normally regret it later. There's several people I know who they upgraded, mainly people who upgraded early. They sold off their older systems, upgraded to the newer systems, and, they played around with them. They said, I don't like the PS4 that much. I'm going to sell this, get an Xbox One, vice versa, whatever it might be. Or they're just flat out bored on the systems. I mean, I've even known people who've had both systems and say, screw this, I'm going PC, whatever it is, because they get bored. Now, honestly, at this point, that's not as big of a deal because there's actually games to play and everything. As I said, that's more of a first world problem with early adopters. But I can understand that issue as well, too. And to me, that's one reason why I never ended up selling off my older systems. That was one big reason, because I still use them. I mean, I've even said this before, but the first day I had my Xbox One, I still got on the Xbox 360 that same day, and I went and I played with a friend on Left 4 Dead. I remember that was the game we were playing. So I still had it in use and everything, and it was in rotation. Now, for people who do want to upgrade to newer systems, but they still want to play their older games, several generations, backwards compatibility was just kind of a thing. Like the Sega Master System, for example, you were able to play those games on the Sega Genesis if you ended up buying a little adapter because all the hardware was there. PlayStation 1 to PS2, sell off your PS1. You can play all your games from the PS1 on the PS2. Same thing with the Wii. You could play all of your GameCube games on the Wii, at least for the first few years. Then they start taking out backwards compatibility and all that. And then even with the Wii U, you can play all... Thank you for firing off fireworks. You can play all of your Wii games on the Wii U, and even if you take one step further and mod it, you can actually play GameCube games on the Wii U as well too, although that's hacked in, so that's not officially supported. But with these new generations of systems, well, this new generation here, the PlayStation 4 doesn't have anti-backwards compatibility with it. People say there's PlayStation Now, and yes, there is, but you have to be always online because you're streaming the games, and it's not exclusive to the PlayStation 4. There's other like you can have a Sony TV, and if it's PlayStation Now compatible, you can play your games on that TV, so you don't even need to own a PlayStation system. The Xbox One has backwards compatibility, coming to it. One big issue with that is it's limited. It's coming out in waves. We already know there's going to be games that will not work on there. Not only there might be some compatibility issues, like right now they're currently working on trying to get multi-disc games working on there properly, but the biggest thing is copyright. There are several games, because they've already said that all 360 games will work on the Xbox One backwards compatibility. It's all up to developers and publishers. And a lot of games no longer have the copyrights that are needed to, distribute everything. And one main reason for it is because it's essentially modified or new code that's being circulated out. If you buy, for example, let's say a copyright expires on a physical game. It's not like that game has to be recalled or anything like that. No. It can still be sold, used, or anything like that. If you own the game, you're fine. But if it's a digital release, they're going to either modify it somehow or stop distributing it digitally. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is actually one big example of this. You can still buy it online, actually, but there have been several songs that have been removed from the game. If you buy the digital PC version, or if you have it on Steam, for example, and you let it update, the last update that came out for San Andreas actually removes several songs from the game. Newer digital versions of San Andreas have several songs removing just because the copyright was gone on there. And because it would be kind of illogical to remove the game itself, which has happened. One example is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. You can no longer buy that game digitally anymore, which I feel bad for people who can't because it's a really fun game. You can't buy that game digitally anymore, unfortunately, because of copyright stuff. But when it comes to San Andreas, they didn't want to take that game away completely, so they said, okay, well, these are the problem songs. We'll just take away the songs, and that's it. But they didn't recall the physical copies of the game or anything like that. No, if you still own the physical copy, you're good, and you have the original version, so you're still okay on that. Now, one thing I had also heard as well, too, this is on the CU podcast, actually, which I like to follow, like, the little clips that Pat the Nez Punk puts out. Ian on there, he actually made a really good point. He ended up saying, his big issue with newer systems and all that is that if they do have backwards compatibility, it is limited, as I have said. And he was saying, he took his, he had an 80 gigabyte PS3. That was the first one he bought. And in case you don't know, the 80 gigabyte PS3s were software backwards compatible, which was just horrible. He put in one game, didn't work. Put in another game, worked flawlessly. Put in another game, super buggy. So he ended up taking back that PS3 and got a slim PS3 that didn't have any PS2 backwards compatibility, because he was still going to have his PS2 on hand, because all of his PS2 games would work properly and perfectly on his PS2 unless there was a physical issue with the system or the disc itself. And that's kind of the same thing with these other game systems. For example, you know, there's a lot of PS3 games that will not be playable on the PS4, even with PlayStation Now. I'll keep the PS3 on hand. There's going to be a lot of Xbox 360 games that will not be compatible on the Xbox One. I'll still have the Xbox 360 to play them on. And there's countless other examples like that, so you are locking yourself out of that library. But that's more for people who either want to go back and experience that type of stuff, you know, whether it be for fun purposes, nostalgia purposes, collecting purposes, whatever it might be. One example here as well, too, was one of my good friends, actually. This was years ago. This is actually back in high school. He ended up selling me his modded PS2, and he got me... He gave me a really, really good deal on it, okay? It was a fat PS2. It had a mod chip installed in it, and he gave me a ton of games with it. He gave me a whole ton of accessories, controllers, and all that for $20. He just needed to get rid of it. And I remember I played it. I had Kingdom Hearts Final Mix patched on there and everything, and I was playing that. I finished Kingdom Hearts 2 with it, but I didn't use it too much afterwards. At one point, I ended up taking it to my mom's house, and it kind of sat in a closet there for about a year or two. A few years later, I believe someone in his girlfriend's family, like their house, ended up burning down, so he wanted to replace their systems. And they had a PS2, and he wanted to replace it. So he asked me, do I still have that PS2? And I said, yeah, I just need to get it back from my mom's house, but I'll give it to you. He asked how much, and I said, you know what, because he was willing to pay more. I said, you know what, I can't do that to a friend, and this is also a really good cause. Just give me the $20 that I gave you a few years ago, and I'll give you everything back. I mean, I didn't touch anything of his. I didn't delete his saves. I didn't part it out, nothing like that. He wasn't even sure if I had it at first. But I gave it to him, and I swear, he started, I don't even think he wanted to give it to his girlfriend's family, because he started going through it, and he legitimately had tears in his eyes, because his entire childhood, but a good part of his gaming childhood was in that box right there. All the games were there, the system, like all of his accessories. He had vivid memories tied back to everything. And, you know, if he just, you know, turned up his nose, he said, no, I don't want to get that older stuff, we're going to get newer stuff, or even if I sold it, he wouldn't have experienced that. And that's something you can't put a price on. That's something that's worth a lot more than $20. That's something that doesn't have any tangible value. And that's something that a lot of people go after. That's why you have so many people that go for retro games and they try and buy games they played when they were a kid. That's why the retro game market is so big, because a lot of people just want to play these games that they played as a child. And even emulation will not suffice. They want the physical system. They want the physical cartridge or the disc. They want to re-experience everything they can again, because it's just a warm, fuzzy, intrinsic feeling that you can't replicate any other way. Now, if that hasn't appealed to you, and if GameStop's not doing a deal or anything, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call up GameStop right now. I'm going to pretend that I'm trying to sell an Xbox 360. We're going to sell a Elite 120 gig Xbox 360, and let's see how much we can get for it.
Hi, thanks for calling GameStop. Our Pro and Salvage Video Games. JJ, how may I help you?
Hi, I was wanting to know, are you all still doing trade-ins on older systems right now?
Yeah, what kind of system by chance?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. I'm not wanting to upgrade to a newer system yet, but I'm just wanting to see how much I can get for it. I'm wanting to sell a 120 gigabyte Elite Xbox 360.
Xbox 360?
Yes.
Cool. What? You said it was Elite?
Yeah, and it's a 120 gig.
Awesome. You said Elite, right?
Yes.
Awesome. It'd be... Oh, it's not bad. It'd just be $20 in trading credit.
It'd be 20 in credit? What about, how much in cash?
16.
Okay, so 16 in cash and 20 in trade?
Yeah.
Alright, awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Have a good one, sir.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. So you all heard that right there. $16 in cash or $20 in trade-in credit for, as I said, a Elite 120 gigabyte Xbox 360. That's that is worth a lot more than $16 or $20 for me. I can tell you that. I can hold on to my system, and even if it's a system I don't use for a while and I just occasionally hop back on it, I feel like I would get a lot more than $16 or $20 worth of enjoyment out of that system. But you know what? That's just me. Anyways, what are your thoughts on this matter? As I said, I really don't see the need most of the time for myself to sell off my older systems, and I really don't have much of a history of doing it. If I do get bored of a system, I will get rid of it. Like one system I've gotten rid of and I never got back was my GameCube. I didn't use it for a while. I ended up selling it because I was actually wanting to get a 360, so I sold it to a friend, and then I never bought another one because I didn't really need to, and if I ever need to play my GameCube games, I had a Wii. And now I have a Wii U that's also modded, so I could even mod GameCube backwards compatibility into it, and emulation's even available, but, you know, you still kind of need a GameCube on the side for it to be completely legal and all that, but that's a whole nother thing. Anyways, let me know what you all think about this. This is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone.